Welcome back to Fraternal Fanatics, where we break down iconic films one deep dive at a time. Today, Aiden and I are tackling Good Will Hunting, a film that blends raw emotion, intellectual depth, and explores the pitfalls of growing up an outsider in Southie Boston. What makes this film so wicked strong? Is it the gripping performances, the deep philosophical questions, the emotional ride between Sean and Will, or the thick Boston accents? No matter what, we're here to discuss it all.
From Will's genius level intellect to his self-destructive tendencies to Sean's powerful mentorship, and of course Chucky's heartfelt wisdom, we're diving into what makes Good Will Hunting a wonderful testament to Robin Williams' impact on the big screen and on our hearts. So grab a dog at the garden and unpack the layers of this film with us, discuss its wicked smart moments, and of course, ask each other, how do you like them apples? We need to touch on the film's atmosphere early on here. We're in Southie Boston. It's clearly a kind of a rough and tough neighborhood. There's fights going on with Will Hunting and his cronies Chucky and the other guys pretty quickly into the movie.
Yeah.
But for good reasons, right? Like I remember the one brawl that they got into on the basketball court early in the movie. They were defending a girl that was being kind of catcalled and
disrespected anyway.
Yeah.
Wasn't showing that crew wasn't showing the proper courtesy, so they stepped in and taught him a lesson.
Exactly, yeah. Show him who's boss. But yeah, and went overboard a bit. You could see at that moment there was a lot of rage in him when he's pounding the guy's face in on the pavement.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's taking it personally at this point. He's not gonna let up until the boys pull him off.
And loyal friends, too. Like, they're all in it. Casey Affleck there almost decides to stay in the car and eat his spuckie.
Yeah, he's being a bit of a puss. He wants his spuckie, but no, he's getting in there.
Yeah, he's got to get in the mix.
Yeah,
throw hands.
Chucky gives him the lowdown, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right. I gotta fucking step in there. Otherwise, Chucky's gonna kick his ass with a spuckie."
And I guess him and his buddies work together too, like a very blue-collar job.
Yeah, working construction, demolition.
Yeah.
The works.
Sledgehammers, breaking down walls. It's much more brawn than brain, you could say.
Yeah, certainly not the optimal use of Will's skills.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
So what's your take on, like, why is he so insistent on remaining in a job that doesn't really challenge his brain power?
I think we see it in that conversation he has with Chuck after work when they're having a beer there on the site. And he sees this intelligence as a burden to him, something he doesn't want to... He never asked for it, so he doesn't want to pursue it or see what he can do, test his ability.
Yeah.
He just wants to remain in this bubble that he's in, pretend it doesn't exist.
The comfort of his friends and the job he knows and the city he loves.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't want to give up what he knows because he doesn't know what else is out there, but...
So maybe he initially interprets it more as even he's cursed with knowledge as opposed to it being a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the chosen one.
Yeah.
Like Harry. Doesn't want to be, but he has to be.
I don't want it. Yeah, Harry Potter and Jon Snow.
Yeah.
There's a lot wrapped
They
up
never
in
want
that.
it.
But yeah, he's definitely got a good group of friends keeping him grounded, but also, like you say, maybe, preventing him from reaching his full potential.
And not that his buddies are unsupportive to him rising above it, especially Chucky.
No, in fact, yeah, they egg him on to do that, to get out of the situation he's in, because he's destined for better things, but he's not having any of that at first.
So speaking of Will, let's jump a little bit more into his intelligence and the effect that plays on his personality and his self-destructive tendencies, how he deals with relationships and
Yeah, he's basically Rain Man, right? Like
basically.
he can just visually view problems on the blackboard like he sees with the math equation, and he can just photographically memorize those equations.
Yeah, he just feels it. Like he mentions in that conversation with Skylar, it's like just understanding piano or an instrument. Like you can just look at it and understand how it works. You can just look at math and understand.
It's like art to him. He's just like absorbing it and spitting the answers back. It's impressive, to say the least.
No kidding.
But yeah, like we were saying, I'm not sure he takes full advantage of that intelligence because he uses it in ways that maybe aren't super beneficial to him, like we see in the bar when he's trying to one up the blonde ponytail guy there when they're both vying for Skylar's attention. Yeah. And he's kind of retorting back lines about how the ponytail guy is plagiarizing things from the books he's been reading.
Yeah, he's just regurgitating information that he's read. It's not there's no critical thought behind it. It's
he calls him out for that.
Yeah,
which is justified. And then he kind of one-ups him with his own cleverness. But yeah, it's not like those type of encounters. It's great that you're pulling on your intelligence to kind of get the best of this pissing contest, but how is that furthering you in terms of your potential? You know what I mean? Like if that's what he's using his intelligence for, it's not adding anything of great value to his life.
Yeah, it might work in the bars trying to pick up some nice ladies, but other than that, it's not gonna get you too far.
Although I guess it was enough to get Skylar's attention to go on a date. And
it
kind
worked.
of blossom the relationship from there.
Yeah.
But at that point, in order for them to stay together, she definitely needs more than just the superficial intelligence. She wants to know who he is truly, which he's resistant to sharing at first, as we see.
Yeah, he's very, very cagey, very standoffish.
Yeah, definitely a defense mechanism. Like he pushes people away or keeps people at arm's length. When they get too close, like Robin Williams said in that one scene, he cuts and runs and escapes the relationship before they're able to end it. He has to be the one to get out before something bad happens.
Yeah, he's got to make the decision that he doesn't want to, which is to leave. Like Robin Williams, Sean, he doesn't matter to him what path he chooses, if it's the math route and working for the NSA or whatever, going into these think tanks, or if it's Skylar in California. It doesn't matter to him which path Will chooses, but he knows it's not in Sathy Boston.
No,
he knows he's got to get out of here.
Yeah, regardless of which path he takes, I think he comments too. He kind of criticizes Will for never being outside of Boston. Like you haven't seen the world, like you haven't truly experienced things. And when he goes on his monologue on the bench too about his Robin Williams or Sean's experiences with the war and love and loss and sickness of a dear loved one, and how you cope with that, and just knocking some sense into Will a little bit in terms of you haven't truly experienced the things that will make you whole, or type of thing.
Yeah, it's not. He references it to art when he's talking about Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel, and he's saying like, you can tell me everything about how it's written in books and everything about Michelangelo, but you know nothing about looking up and
You haven't
seeing
stood
that
there
ceiling.
and smelled it and taken it in and
Yeah.
really, really experienced it.
Yeah, that's it. Experience. I
fullest
think that's
degree.
like
Yeah.
the key he's trying to drop is you haven't experienced.
Yeah. And that hits home, I think, with Will, right? Like he internalizes that and realizes that he's right, probably. And I would say that's a breakthrough in their relationship, too. Like trust is developed there between Will and Sean. And it's probably one of the first times, besides Chucky and the boys, that Will has been vulnerable with someone or developed some form of trust. It's a big character moment for both of those guys, I think. Sean, in the way that, you know, he always, the first time we see him, he talks about establishing trust with his clients being a really important thing in psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back at certain points throughout the film, including this one on the park bench that we're discussing. That monologue, his sort of soliloquy, his outpouring of inner dialogue to Will shows that he's really trying to establish trust, I think, with Will, and it works in that moment. Like it's very effective in that way.
Yeah, no, it's essential to his growth. It's that relationship is the only reason he makes the decisions he does.
Why do you think Sean feels such an affinity for helping Will on his path? Like, does he see some of himself in Will?
Yeah, I think it's they both trust each other for the same reason that they both see each other or they both see themselves in each other. So it's like a natural. There's a like under the surface, there's a mutual understanding of who they both are immediately because they recognize how similar their traits are.
Yeah, and they've both experienced similar things in terms of hardships.
Yeah.
Like Will with his abuse in foster homes and Sean with his wife and his experiences losing, you know, brothers in war, his wife getting cancer.
Well, and he was abused as a child too.
His abuse as a child, from his father.
Yeah.
And in terms of his professional relationships too, like it seems like his colleagues maybe got the better of him in terms of high tenured positions, whereas he it's kind of like reminds me of a Walter White situation where he ends up being a lower level tiered position.
Yeah, in the lower tax bracket. Yeah, but
he's not necessarily fully fulfilled with where he ended up, but he recognizes that external life experiences have kind of put him in a place where he's satisfied with being where he is.
Yeah, well, actually, the Walter White is a very good comparison for him because it's in the same sense that, of course, his ability is understated by the role he has, but he still enjoys the role he has. Like in that class, we see Sean, like he enjoys teaching that class. He's getting the students back engaged and like he's having fun with it, cracking jokes.
Yeah.
And Walter White in the first season anyway, or in the first couple episodes even, we see him teaching that chemistry class and he's talking about the different chemicals that affect the color of the flame.
Yeah.
And like he's having fun
lively
with it. It's very engaging and like he enjoys talking about the subject, even despite it being to a room full of kids.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like any of them are really enjoying it as much as he is, but that doesn't really matter to him.
Exactly.
In that, if there's at least one kid in the class that is taking something away, then that's probably enough for him at that moment.
Yeah, and it's the same thing in that lecture hall with when Stellan Skarsgård interrupts. It's the same, like, as long as one kid takes something away, he's done his job.
Yeah, and maybe that answers my question for why Sean is so drawn to Will. So Will doesn't have very many complex relationships, you could say, at the beginning. Like,
Mm-hmm.
We talked about his group of friends, but it's, they like to have a good time, drink beers at the pub and have some spuckies, but we got to talk about, I guess, his relationship with Skylar, because I think that's a big growing moment for Will.
Yeah.
In terms of letting someone into his life and really being honest.
Mm. Yeah, he's resistant to do so, and he puts up that wall like he always does. But he's probably more open with her than he has been with anybody previously in his life, even despite that being pretty surface level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he almost fumbles the bag with his own defense mechanisms and tries to push her away once she starts getting too close.
Mm-hmm.
He lies to her, too, about the brother thing, like him having brothers. What do you think of that? Like, is that in terms of he's ashamed of his upbringing in foster homes and the abuse he suffered, so he prefers to lie about that so he doesn't have to kind of rehash old wounds?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. He just presents this image of, a big happy family, 12 siblings, 12 brothers. And yeah, just it gives a different image of what it was, but I imagine the names he rattles off those 12 names, and I have to imagine that those would have been foster siblings of his. Or
Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was just like, he's such a smart guy that he would have no trouble thinking up 12 names on the spot, just rattling them off, like you said.
mm-hmm.
But that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it being, names of other foster children that he grew up with through the system.
Yeah, it's just so quick and so specific that I don't think it would have been. And 12 is such a specific number that I don't think it would have been a coincidence.
Maybe I wonder if those were all the guys that beat on him.
Yeah,
It's an even darker take on why he would have rattled those off so fast.
that might be even more correct than anything else, though. Even if it's not written like that or intended like that.
Yeah. But then, yeah, I mean, you're inevitably getting yourself into a tight spot whenever she wants to meet all your brothers. And where are all your brothers? You got 12 of them. No one's in town. Like, I can't meet any. No one's coming over to your place
Yeah.
and trying to get at you, hit you up, go for a drink. And like,
Yeah, he won't even show her his place.
yeah.
Won't even
So
bring her over.
feels some shame for that, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he could spruce up that place a little bit, though. Do you think it's just like he prefers living minimally in a very male living space energy?
Yeah, very bachelor pad, simple.
Yeah, like TV on the floor, no bed frame, mattress on the floor.
Yeah, if I don't
books.
use it, I don't need it.
Yeah.
It's a peak male living space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't want to get too attached to anything, so he doesn't hang anything on the walls, doesn't keep much, because he'll just move around on a moment's notice.
Yeah. I mean, he probably doesn't have the money for a nice place either. Like, he's working 2 jobs, the construction and the cleaning the floors at MIT.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably factors into it too. But I would imagine that some of it is behavioral. Like, that's part of his personality. Like you said, like, just has what he needs. That's about it. Doesn't have any need to spruce up the place, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Very utilitarian.
Yeah.
What's your take on Sean versus Skylar? Like, do you think they help Will in different ways, I guess? Or is one relationship in your eyes more important to Will than the other? Are they kind of dependent on each other? What's your thoughts on comparing the two, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, that they're dependent on each other, because I don't think, I mean, it's clear that his relationship with Skylar wouldn't have worked, or we don't even see that it does work, I guess. Ultimately, he goes to California, but yeah, I know he wouldn't have done that as a character without the advice he got from Sean, and the reinforcement of that advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they are dependent on each other. That being said, I guess maybe the more important relationship would be Sean because he got him to that place. Like if he met Skylar before Sean, big problem. If he met Skylar after Sean, potentially good situation, but he met Skylar during his time with Sean, which is probably best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether Will and Skylar worked out in the end when he made it to California, Sean still allowed him to make it to the point to take that step and realize, he needs to embrace his intelligence.
Yeah, he set him up for success, despite what that meant.
Yeah,
if it was personal or career focused. So let's take a bit of a step away from Will and look at some of the other characters in the movie, specifically Professor Lambeau and Sean McGuire and their history and relationship and kind of how their motivations differ when it comes to mentoring Will.
Yeah, Will has quite the support system in this movie from both Lambeau and Sean. Lambeau is much more, focused on his intelligence, and Sean is much more focused on breaking through to that emotional, soft center underneath, and embracing what Will truly wants in life, not necessarily, what he can do with his intelligence, how he can be a tool for the world, kind of. And I think it's important to have that dichotomy of relationships too. And then, as we said with Skylar too, that's a whole nother system of support that he has, much more romantic side of things. So it's interesting, this trifecta of he's got the romantic support, he's got the support for his intelligence, and then he's got Sean with like the overall, like, I just want what's best for you. Tell me how it really is, like what's really eating away at you. Tell me what you really want in life, and let's get there. I think it's important to have both, right? Like Lambeau, it's important that Will embraces his intelligence. I think I can see where Lambeau is coming from there, but do you think he's too forward with that? Do you think that is kind of selfish on his part?
In part, selfish. He wants to cherish this ability. He's never seen a brain that can perform like Will's. But ultimately, he doesn't have anything to gain from what he's doing for Will, like really monetarily or to his legacy. It doesn't really give him anything.
Yeah, it's not personal selfishness necessarily.
Yeah, but I think it's more the pursuit and the advancement of math and science is more his motivation. It's like, we need this kid to bring the field to the next level.
Right. Which is reductive to him as a human being, right? Like,
yeah.
What does this guy want? Not like, what can this guy give the world?
So it's almost selfish because he's expecting Will to, that be the most important thing in his life, or that be, his entire personality, his entire mark on the world is just his brain and his ability in math. But Sean, much more the opposite side of the spectrum. It's find your place first, figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, and then use your brain to pursue that. Use your brain to give you that leg up.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lambeau's motivations kind of remind me of that line too, about valuing your brain as the price you pay for tuition. I feel like, as Lambeau being a university professor at MIT for many years, his approach towards Will speaks to that idea of he values Will's brain so highly. In his eyes, he should be like one of his students, paying all this money to get an education from him, and then that way they can benefit from each other too, because he has a lot of respect for what he can do in his own field. But yeah, it's that he's valuing Will's brain over, his other abilities as a human being, or valuing that above all else. And I think that's speaks a lot to his, motivations as a professor, to the different paths that Sean and Lambo took. Like, Sean is much more humanistic and down to earth and focused on the individual, whereas Lambo is, the betterment of his field and the best and the brightest, and kind of like a slughorn. I want to collect Will and
get him
make
in the
him my
slug club.
protege. Yeah. And yeah, Sean's motivations are much more pure. So and that comes through a lot more because you have the opposing views of Lambo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's if he only had one of those mentors or the other, he wouldn't take, the other area of expertise as seriously. Sean's being, the developing that emotional intelligence and, reconciling with who he is, and Lambo being like the pursuit of excellence and, the leveraging his brain. It's, if he only had one of those mentors, he likely would have dove very deep into one facet. Actually, honestly,
That's a good point, yeah.
If he had only met Sean, he probably wouldn't have even taken it seriously.
Well, it's funny that Lambo actually introduces the two, sets up the meeting.
Yeah.
So it's almost like Lambo, it's his own undoing.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
If Lambo really wanted to, the pursuit of excellence piece of it, bringing him to Sean was counterintuitive to that goal.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't know it at the time, I wouldn't say.
No, nor could he. Like,
he just wanted Sean, to be able to help Will overcome boundaries to the degree that he would follow through with Lambo's plan to, soar to greater heights.
Yeah.
Do you think there was jealousy at all there with Lambo?
I mean, I guess there's always been jealousy from Lambo towards Sean. Like, it seems like their past is all kind of, they have their heated conversation there before Will comes in for that appointment with Sean. And Professor Lambo makes a comment, like, you were smarter than me then, referring to when they were back in college, and you're smarter than me now, is that what you want me to say? Or he says something like that anyway, and it's clear that, like, Lambo has been surrounded by this kind of these gifted people all his life, and their ability is overcoming his money, or I don't know, he does kind of seem like comes from money, or the character is kind of portrayed as like, he's kind of paid to get where he is, despite he's smart, sure, but he's had kind of that financial backing and that support that Robin Williams and Matt Damon's characters never had.
Yeah, he might have got to where he's at a little easier than some other people would have, and maybe feels a false sense of achievement over that.
Yeah, exactly.
And him saying, yeah, is that what you want to hear? Like, that you're the smarter guy. Like, maybe he does. That's something he's struggled with for many years. Like,
yeah,
he tries to hide the fact that he's not necessarily as deserving of the position he's in as someone like Sean would be. And maybe doesn't understand why Sean is content in the position he's in.
Yeah.
Given that he could be destined for better things or greater things, but he chooses to stay at the level he's at.
Yeah. Yeah, he's found contentment, and that's probably something Lambo doesn't understand, is just feeling content and feeling.
Yeah, his ambition overrides that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's always chasing something more. There's always something greater.
But it's never brought him any sort of fulfillment.
Yeah, no, it'll never be enough.
Maybe jealousy for Will isn't necessarily what Lambo's feeling then. Maybe it's more of he wishes to live vicariously through Will, because it's his best chance of kind of redoing the past and attaining the sense of fulfillment that he didn't feel like he truly attained with his own career.
So we've got to touch on the most pivotal relationship in this movie, which is between Will and Sean. It's
quite the evolution.
very much, yeah. Starts very, as any relationship of Will's does, very standoffish, very cagey.
Yeah, but he's also, you can tell he's sizing him up, right?
Yeah.
Like looking around his office, kind of judging him immediately.
Yeah, the same way he did with the other therapists. He's just playing the game. How long can I take these guys for a ride before I get them to give up?
Yeah, probably identifying weaknesses and stuff too. Like, how can I push this guy's buttons so that, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. And it's no no different here. Immediately starts with, saying he's a shitty artist and talking about all the books he's probably never read, but of course he's corrected that Sean's read all these books, and he's asking him about what are the right books and what have you read, and Will's brushing him off and looking around at other stuff in his office, and yeah, finally comes to the point of bringing up Sean's wife and asking if he had made the right choice, and really cutting deep, and it's clear that Sean marks his boundaries there.
Yeah, like that exchange between them, that back and forth. I mean, like we said, sizing each other up, like Sean's doing it too, right? Will probably doesn't realize that him being hard-nosed and resistant is actually giving a lot of information to a guy like Sean. But the comment about the wife, yeah, that definitely stings, and he's gone too far there, and that establishes for both of them the boundaries in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes Will by surprise too. He's probably not expecting a guy like Sean to be, he grabs him by the throat and he's like, "I'll fucking end you if you talk bad about my wife again," without giving too much context as to, what his wife means to him. We don't know about the cancer and stuff yet at that point. So we're shocked as the viewer, just as Will is. I think Will kind of underestimates Sean here too, like this guy in a sweater vest, just like very mild mannered. He probably thinks he can walk all over him.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Yeah, he's corrected almost immediately.
Yeah.
Sean gives him a bit of a leash to go on, but as soon as he steps out of line, he's done.
Yeah.
Do you think in that first, heated exchange about the painting, do you think that's the first time that Sean sees, that part of himself in Will? Because obviously, immediately after that happens, Professor Lambeau comes back in the room and he's like, "I understand if you don't want to see him again." And Sean's immediately like, "I'll see him on Thursday at whatever time. Make sure he's here."
Yeah.
And it's like right away he's in. Like, even despite that heated exchange, he's like, they're from somewhere, and maybe it's that there's an understanding. And yeah, do you think that's when he sees it, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Will's interpretation of that painting is exactly what Sean needed to hear in order to help him, despite the comment about the wife and him being adamant that, like, he was aggressive about don't touch that subject type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think, yes, like you said, he saw himself in Will's interpretation, because he described it as like a broken man that's left out to drift in the sea. His boat's falling apart, the oars are broken, there's a storm brewing in. Like, it's speaking a lot of his internal dialogue, and that's what Sean needs to hear. He understands how much he's struggling, and he can connect with that because Sean has dealt with some major hardships in his life too. So yeah, I think that's the moment for sure when he's like, "Yeah, I see myself in this kid. I want to help him, make sure that he doesn't fall victim to the motivations of Professor Lambeau and him just living a kind of sad existence of just pumping out everything he can out of that brain instead of searching for love and fulfillment." So yeah, no, I think you said it very aptly. That was the moment where Sean was like, "Yeah, I need to help this kid."
Yeah, we see the result of that almost right away with the scene with interaction, Sean's monologue on that, or Rum Williams' monologue on that park bench there, when he, is explaining he's talking about the Sistine Chapel and, experiencing all these things and taking note of Will's lack of experience and explaining the difference between what he knows, which is traditional intelligence, what you'd read in books, and understanding the X's and Y's, but he hasn't had those real emotional experiences. And
Sean's pretty confrontational about that with Will too, in the way he delivers that monologue. Like he's being real with him, like he's not fucking around. Like you haven't really scratched the surface of what life is. That's probably why you're so fucking angry all the time and are getting into fights and putting up defense mechanisms because you're not satisfied or fulfilled. And he gets through to Will in many ways that I don't think anyone truly has at that point in his life. And it feels like the exact thing that Will needed to hear in that moment to start changing his perspective. Like that's the moment where he's letting Sean in, and Sean is able to start chipping away after that point, right? Like he's planting the seed there, and then it starts to grow after that moment. I think the confrontational aspect of it is he needs to use that type of approach with a guy like Will, because Will is so resistant and defensive. So it's like, listen to what I'm saying here because it's important, and you don't know shit. I've been through a hell of a lot. Like, listen to what I have to say, and I'm trying to help you, type of thing. You just need to hear it. And I think Will realizes that after that heavy monologue. But yeah, super powerful moment. Like, in my opinion, one of the most critical scenes in the movie.
Yeah, probably the highlight of a very good movie. That was, real gin. It was super
Robin Williams slays it.
Amazing performance. Yeah. No, it's a real testament to him as a person. Like it's quite this movie's quite the tribute to
his ability to like elicit that kind of emotion. Like just you're hanging on every word, and like it's touching into your soul. His words, like what he's saying, you can connect with as a viewer too. At least I could personally. So yeah,
and
very powerful and important.
His like, largely emotionless performance of it too. Like you can see it's something that he's reconciled with. Like he's not, he's not broken.
Yeah, the painful moments in his past have made him who he is, and he's reconciled with that.
Yeah, but you can still see there's still that layer of pain to it. Like there's still that layer of
absolutely, like that'll never leave.
But
it's a more of how to manage that, or how to accept that pain, and
how to still
use it to grow,
go through day to day with that,
or use that pain to help people like Will. All right, before we wrap up, we got to talk about one last kind of relationship that Will had that we didn't touch on a whole lot, but that I think that was really important for him. We talked about the trifecta of relationships he had with Skylar, Sean, and Lambo, but I think there was a fourth element of support that Will had too, and that lies in Chucky, his best friend, the ultimate best friend, Chucky.
Chucky. Good old Chucky.
Chucky's been brewing up spuckies. We're going to meet him at the Packy for a spuckie and a beer.
Spuckie and a beer. What's better?
Maybe take in a Red Sox game.
Head down to the garden. Get a couple dogs.
Couple of dogs. Maybe a clam chowder. Catch a foul ball. Take it home to Ma. Yeah, no, Chucky's a good dude. I think he's, we talked about him being a bit more of a superficial relationship. Like they hang out together, they drink beers, they watch the ball games,
eat spockies.
but maybe don't provide a whole lot of deeper emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Chucky is a bit of a black sheep in that regard.
Yeah, he's kind of the exception to that rule. And
Yeah.
nobody including Sean really sees that side of him. And even like as the audience, we don't really see that side of him until they have that conversation where Chucky's saying, like, there's every day I hope I don't see you coming down that porch. I come pick you up and I hope I don't see you. I hope you're gone without notice. And of course Will follows through on that wish in the end, but
That's the most selfless wish a best friend could have for someone, especially
Yeah.
like Chucky doesn't seem like the type of guy that would even have that kind of self-awareness to be like, I understand our relationship and the situation that you're in. You're a hell of a lot smarter than I am. You're destined for greater things. We both recognize that, but you continue to refuse to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's constantly egging him on, and he just deeply wishes that he pursues other things.
Yeah. And his wish being that he kind of just leaves without a trace. It's I think the motivation behind that is to kind of save them both, to make it easier for both of them to not have to say goodbye or whatever, not that they wouldn't have to acknowledge that they won't see each other, like they won't be a part of each other's lives for potentially a very long time. But he knows that like the only way to do that, the only way that they can manage that is to just that Irish goodbye, which ironically I guess Irish goodbye is a good, very fitting for them.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing for their relationship. I think a resentment would have brewed between the two of them if Will had have stayed behind and just stuck with what he was doing, right? Like that had been brewing, I think, under not like a resentment and like a mean spirited, but just like we said, I think Chucky just understood the reality of the situation and that Will really just needed to get out of there to make the most of himself, and Chucky was fine taking the back seat to that and giving him the freedom to do that without any animosity or bad blood or like I'll see you when I see you type of thing. Got my support, unwavering support.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's got to be tough for him to do that too with the character. He is like a much more macho kind of. It would be tough for him to admit that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I think without that conversation, the whole series of events wouldn't have happened. Like as much as there was so many factors that played into Will's decision and his being his perspective and his position in life being much better than how it started. There's a lot of factors to that, but I think ultimately without that conversation with Chucky, he wouldn't have gotten to that place. Like he needed Chucky to be able to say, not necessarily that he's getting rid of him, or not. I shouldn't say not necessarily, not at all that he wants to get rid of him or that he doesn't like hanging out with him, but it was the acknowledgement of, I know that you have to do this, and I don't. If you're sticking around construction and staying around Southie Boston for me, like you're wasting your time, man.
Yeah, no, Chucky's blessing it was the last nail in the coffin to solidify his plan to leave, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately that's, a move nobody else made. I mean, like Sean too supported the decision he was making, but Chucky was much more like, you have to do something. Like Sean was content with, let's help this kid figure it out. Chucky was like, what you need to do.
Yeah, I think they had both known it for a while, right? They were just, happy to continue hanging out and having some good times.
Yeah.
I like how when Chucky goes to Will's place and realizes that he's gone too, and he has that kind of realization and look of satisfaction on his face, and then he goes back to join the other guys at the car. And immediately upon realizing that Will's not there anymore, Casey Affleck's character is like, yeah, shotgun, I got front seat.
Gotta jump in there. Yeah. And he's rubbing it in. I can't even remember his name, but the guy sitting in the back there, he's like rubbing it in, looking back, and he's like, oh, look at this shit, bud. Yeah, it's so good.
A little cap off for his character, too.
Yeah. Little fucker. So that's pretty well a wrap on Good Will Hunting. Certainly a stellar movie from my perspective, at least. Definitely earns the reputation it has.
Yeah, super emotional, great acting, unbelievable for sure.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one that obviously I'm now after seeing it, I'm amazed that I'd never seen before, but I guess in a sense I'm glad I didn't, just because if I had seen this younger, if I'd seen this as a teenager or something, it wouldn't have resonated as much, like it wouldn't have been as impactful as it is now. So definitely bumping it up a score on the rankings anyway.
Yeah, I mean Robin Williams is just a true treat to watch, right? Like,
yeah,
his humor is amazing. He's hilarious to watch, but in this movie, a much more emotional and serious take, and he just knocks it out of the park. Like, I was welling up at points for sure, and for him to elicit that kind of emotion just with his words and his demeanor speaks a lot about his ability as an actor. So that really helped this movie soar to great heights when it first came out, and leaves it as a timeless piece that you could come back to. And if you're looking for a deeply emotional story, then this is a great one to pick.
Yeah. Well, would you say this is one of the greatest films of all time? Perhaps
that's
outstanding.
A high honor. Greatest film of all time. That is a high honor.
Yeah.
It's up in the rankings, I think, for sure, in my opinion. Like, it definitely wouldn't be anywhere near the bottom. The acting chops alone. My first instinct is to put it as an outstanding.
Outstanding?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think in outstanding right now we have Harry Potter and Taxi Driver, right?
Correct, yeah.
So that's in outstanding, that would certainly be, if you agree, at the top of that category.
I think I'd put it above both of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I gotta say, I am thinking greatest films of all time.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
I shouldn't be surprised. More or less
launched the careers of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and I can't, obviously, the history is a little tricky when I wasn't alive or was very young, but Robin Williams, I feel like before that wasn't doing a lot of serious, like Mrs. Doubtfire and stuff would have been before that, and I think would have been before that.
Yeah, it was maybe an early foray into a different role that isn't comedy humor based.
Yeah, and just absolutely home run. Like, he absolutely crushed it. And yeah, Ben Affleck was great in it, and Matt Damon was great in it, and Stellan Skarsgård even was. It was. You see him in so many things, and he just gives a good performance. Like, he's such a solid actor every time, and it was no different in this. Like, he was very good in the role he was in. It wasn't like super prominent compared to Sean and Will, but he played the role very well. And anyway, yeah, long way around of saying I'm thinking greatest films of all time.
You make a convincing argument too, and with what we discussed about the spider web of relationships in this movie, and Will kind of being offered something different from each of these characters in his life that are trying to push him forward to better things, but in slightly different ways. It helps round him out as a character too, even if he doesn't decide to act on all those things. They help make his final decision to pursue a life in California, even if it doesn't work out with Skylar, even just to pursue a life outside of Boston. Yeah, I think I think you make a convincing argument, and I would be willing to bump my score up a little higher and put it in the GOAT tier.
All right. Well, there we have it, folks. We got him. Greatest films of all time for Good Will Hunting. Yeah, I think that's only right.
I think so too. Ma,
Ma,
Good
come
Will
down
Hunting.
to the
It's in the
cellar. I
goat
got a
tier.
spuckie.
As always, we appreciate you listeners for joining us in this deep dive into Good Will Hunting. It was wicked fun breaking down the film for you townies, from its raw emotional depth to its unforgettable moments. So if you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
What's your favorite moment from Good Will Hunting? What do you think of Will's journey? Let us know on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep chowing down on those spockies with Chucky. How do you like them apples?